Hello and welcome back. My name is Fly. This is the third part of my reaction. We are watching the Trump-Harris debate, and I'm not going too much into detail about their politics, but we want to see what each candidate has to say. I will comment on that, and from my recollection, I will give you my opinion, and then I might give you some references later on in the video, in the top left or in the middle, if I'm not sure about something. So let's get into it. I hope you enjoy, and I've been to America for a long time, and I hope you enjoy.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly?
24 hours. Oh man. I mean, he's friends with Putin as far as I remember, or at least he thinks he is. But he had some positive things going on with Putin back in the day. But 24 hours is a very low amount of time for conflict that has so much background.
Would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO.
So the thing is, it's a little bit complex. Europe got asked, but as a part of NATO, and because Ukraine has not joined the NATO, there are several reasons for that, and also it might have been a mistake that they didn't apply earlier, because now they can't just join. And that's the main reason why they get indirect help. So there's a lot of help coming from Europe. I will not comment on the details, but I will give you some proof in the top. But of course, America always spends more money on military actions, and they're more active. The thing is that Europe cannot risk getting too active because Russia has nuclear weapons that they might be using. They already threatened that in terms of, or Putin said that he will use them. I don't think he will, because then he will also harm his own people. And I don't think he will, but you can never underestimate how crazy somebody can be if he wants to win desperately. And this is what it looks like to me, that Russia is trying to kind of get Ukraine back into their fold to reverse the independence of Ukraine, and that's why they did start this war in the first place.
They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 100.
I wonder where he gets this number from, because I mean the US household for the US military back in the day was about 1.3 to 1.7 trillion dollars, but it got raised by 1 trillion under Trump, as far as I remember. So that's the numbers from a couple of years ago, but I don't know what they spend right now.
150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
So he doesn't pick sides. Obviously, I would say Trump is being active in terms of military actions, but when I remember back in the day, in between 16 and 2020, he was trying to negotiate, or he was trying to accomplish certain missions in Afghanistan, and that was not successful, even though he spent so much money. Okay, so spending money alone is not the sole solution, and being active. Also, my belief is that his positive vibes with Russia were controlled by Putin, and it was a beneficiary relationship for Putin, and he kind of used Trump, in my opinion. So I don't know if he can influence Putin like that. Maybe Putin will say, okay, we'll stop this war for Trump, but then he will not get Zelensky in the fold. And the other way around, he will not get Putin back into the boat if he gets a positive result with Zelensky. So there's a big conflict, and it's much, much deeper than he scratches on, and it's not as easy. So we want to see a leader who can accomplish diplomacy, security, and everything. So he tries to enforce his vision. Right now he doesn't go into detail, but I just hope that whoever is in power can do some nice negotiations. And also Europe is a big part of it. They are already negotiating a lot, and Biden recently has said he wants to financially support Zelensky. I think Zelensky is coming to the White House very soon, so we'll see what happens then. And I don't know if they can do something before the new president is elected, but I deeply hope so. And it's not about money, it's about the people. And many civilians have died, especially in Ukraine. And I don't know why Trump doesn't pick any side, especially if the aggressor is Russia in this case.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later,
I want to let her continue, but I really like that she really goes into the historical part of it, that she adds details, that she acknowledges the change of boundaries and everything that has happened, while Trump didn't even touch on the facts like that. And this is a sole difference between the two. One strongly making a point, the other one putting out some facts, but neither one of them is basically right now a solution. Both could be, if you look at it neutrally and you don't know both of them, both of them could accomplish their goal, but Trump doesn't reveal anything. Probably Kamala Harris doesn't reveal her exact plan neither, but at least she acknowledges what has happened. She has the facts clear. She shows that she knows what she's talking about. And I want to hear what she has to say about her meeting with Zelensky.
Later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country.
And even after more than 2 years of war, that is, Russia claimed that they can get their goals accomplished, and they had some different reasons given to their public why they're attacking Ukraine, but to basically get the territory back into foot within a couple of days. Then it was within a week, then it was within this month. And it never has happened because of the Western support, which was indirect, but financial and parts of machines, probably parts of weapons, everything has been given to them, not as openly and as actively as one would like to do it, but under the circumstances, probably the only way because of Russians threatening with the bombs.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Wow, she's really to the point without any talking around it. I mean, he is kind of a dictator. He controls the media. He never has to be reelected again. He's cheating the system. If there's an opponent, they somehow get attacked or something happens to them. Recently, there has been incidents where the political opposition has been attacked by poisoning, by radiation poisoning, and so on. So it is also unheard of that you get strong voices against Putin because it's forbidden. You get imprisoned for even raising your voice. So I don't want to go too much into detail about that. I already said too much, I think. But these are the facts. This is what's really happening. And to live in such a country is probably not easy. I cannot imagine it. And people might not even know what's really going on, or maybe some people do because there's a lot of people with Western friends or access to media, even though it is officially not allowed.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour.
Or if it is allowed, it's probably not. They will say the same thing as Trump would say, it's fake news. So they basically say the West is lying for this and that reason.
I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow.
Why is he talking about Putin's losses? That doesn't make any sense.
He would have been sitting
millions
in
of
Moscow,
lost by Ukraine.
much happier than he is right now.
Civilians. They even. I just wanted to tell you a little story that I remember now. So there was a ceasefire, and it should have lasted a couple of days, but at least enough time for, I don't remember what the exact town was, but uh, the normal citizens were allowed to leave the basically the area, but then they said you only can go east, you cannot go west. So that was already a conflict of interest. So they wanted them to come towards Russia. Then they, after some negotiations, somehow were allowed to go west, but the western roads were all mined. So luckily, the whole trail wasn't going there, just a couple of buses, but they basically ran into those mines, and a lot of civilians died that night. Even though it was a ceasefire, even though they were allowed to go, but it was a trick. So they wanted them to go east. They wanted to raise fear for other people to go east, but I don't remember the details what happened after, but not many people went the eastern route. They stayed where they were afraid. And this is only one of the scenarios that are really dangerous. I also remember there was an attack on a or near a power plant, and it was a power plant. I don't remember if radiation was involved inside the power plant. It was really, really dangerous. It was probably it was nothing happened in the end, but it was really close to that. And I think they threatened to attack this power plant if people don't step down or if people don't give up and everything like that. So it's really crazy. I think they got the military to move away and only civilians stayed behind, and they could conquer the city. But it's always a back and forth, and it's too much detail to go into. War is always very dirty, especially in the area where you fight. And most of the civilians who died were, of course, there were many civilians dying on the Ukraine side. They didn't invade Russia; they invaded Ukraine, right? So mm, people have already been able to attack Russia, also on the other side of the border. But this is only to make a point, only to show that they are not completely weakened and that Russia cannot just do what they want. So I don't think they want to invade Russia. They just want to keep the borders as they are.
But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and.
If there is no war, how can you negotiate peace? That doesn't make any sense. And also, it doesn't matter what happens 3 days before the attack. They would have invaded Ukraine anyways, and they made sure that there is a reason from their point of view, which was not the truth. It was something completely different. I don't remember what the Russian media said, but it was not that they want to conquer Ukraine. There was actually the claim that Ukraine did something very bad to Russian agents or whatever. I don't remember. But they made up a reason to invade the country.
Stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later.
Right.
And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. Mm-hmm. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy.
I see. That's again the point. He likes Putin a lot. because he has so much power over the people. I think he when, for example, I think it was Xi, I don't remember the exact name, the president who's still, or the political person who's still in power in China, got a law done or finished that allows him presidency for lifetime, and he was really into that. So he likes those people, and he also liked the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un a lot. And he says he has had very good talks with him and stuff like that. So even if that's true, it is not very favorable to blindly fall in love. So it looks like he has his pink glasses on when it's about those people, and he doesn't pick sides against them, even though politically, socially, there are norms and other things that are threatened by those people. He doesn't even mention that.
And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the
Exactly.
benefit of personal flattery.
Exactly. And what I like about her is she doesn't directly answer to his threats. She puts out the facts again. That might seem weak to people who already favor Trump, who say he's very strong, she's weak, but that's logic, that's facts. I like this kind of discussion more than the other sides. But we will see what happens.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing
why is
I've
he allowed
ever
to talk
seen.
again?
He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time.
I mean, due to all respect to the former president, but he already has won the coin toss. I don't know what happens in the end. He has the final word in the end, but I don't know if he should be allowed to talk that much out of. I mean, he's already not answering the questions, and he should not talk so much out of his time. So then she should be allowed to raise some points too.
To pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen, for years we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped
This
off
is
by
untrue.
European.
What does it mean you paid all of NATO? Of course, America always had a big chunk of the cake that they paid, but it's also because of their activism, because of their way of doing military missions and everything. So, and nobody was actually. No, I cannot say that. So there was also a reason for that. I just want to say, and it's not that easy that he, as he downplays it, that we just paid it, and he doesn't even say how much they paid. He doesn't even say how much the other NATO states paid. I mean, there are also negotiations that have been made, who pays what, and it was agreed upon. So you cannot say we were forced to pay. No, you weren't. Everybody did pay their share, as they should. And there are rules if you don't pay the 2% or 3% of your country's income, then there's consequences, of course. So there is rules, there is negotiations, there is things that European countries, other NATO countries had to pay, and also that America agreed to pay.
Nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of...
I've heard about that. I remember that numbers, and I remember a Camp David story. I have to see what the exact details were, but I believe her for now.
Storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold.
That's actually true. He also compared two prices. I don't know which cross it was called for the military people in action. Some of them died, some of them survived with basically they were hurt during the war, or they just got basically this medal because of their actions, and they're still having a normal life. But these are mostly veterans who get this medal. And then there was a civilian medal that is an honor of a different kind, but he says they are equal, and that those more normal medals that were given, these public medals were given to very nice looking women, very weird comment, and that they're more alive, they don't have those limbs missing, they don't have those negative effects of the war. So this medal is at least the same level as the Holy Cross, or whatever the cross is that the military gets. I have to look that up and then put it in the top. So this is really weird, and it offended a lot of veterans, and I don't know how you can say that, because people are giving their lives. If it's right or wrong to do so, if it's right to join the military or not, I will not discuss that, and I don't want to discuss if it's good or bad to get into attack mode or action militarily, because it depends on the situation. There are a lot of things to consider, and decisions should never be made easy, as it seems by Trump, who always says this is easy, just let's do this, and it doesn't work out. And I remember there were some weak deals he made, and if he also claimed, I think he won against the Taliban, but it didn't happen. There were terror attacks after his reign, so the Taliban were not gone, and they were not peaceful by any means. So let's hear what's happening further.
Hold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me?
So what does it mean you have problems? What were the problems that he got? It didn't really happen. And they were already having the advantage because they know the mountains, they know the country better. And it was very hard to get to them. So, of course, there were technical ways with the drones and everything to get some of them attacked, but it was really hard because of the territorial advantages and knowing of it.
A picture of my house.
And they really don't care about how many soldiers are there and everything. So if America is more aggressive or less aggressive, because they were very confident in their mission, and there are people who don't think in terms of humanity or life anymore. They give their lives freely for their cause, which is very dangerous.
I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we
So what was the detail of this good deal? What is good about it? Tell us what is good about this deal and how it went down. Exactly. I don't think it was that good, in my opinion.
wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind,
So
and
much
we
would
wouldn't
and
have left.
could.
We wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
and
on.
These
But then
people
what is good
did the
about it
worst.
if they didn't do it? They didn't stop the killing. So what's good about this deal? I don't get it.
Withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't.
Exactly. He says he doesn't, but this is so weird. Every teacher, every teaching assistant, everybody who attends university, even school, gets into those rules. For example, Title IX. For example, about gendering. For example, about racial respect, let's say. And it's never okay to ask people in America, or maybe all over the world, about their race, about so this is a weird question. Where do you exactly come from? If they're American, they're American, you know. I mean, if you know somebody a little better, you might ask him, hey, I know your parents are from Italy, what's up about that? But you don't ask like, oh, where are you from? After just saying hello and hearing maybe some kind of accent, which is already a little offensive, and then talking about skin color or races. Also, he mixes sometimes up how somebody looks, the color of the skin, for example, or something else, and heritage. It doesn't always have to align. So there's a difference between the race, the religion, and some other sub. But there's other things that are not exactly the same as race. So he mixes them up sometimes.
And I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I
asking,
don't know. I don't know.
It's not a question of what she wants to be. She is black. She's half Jamaican and she's half Indian. I mean, her parents' heritage. So that makes her both black and Asian. Even though many Indians. So I think if an American has an Asian in mind nowadays, it's different. But back in the day, they would probably think more into Tokyo, Japan, China, Korea, and so on. But it's or Vietnam. But it's also, of course, India.
I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
But then why do you complain? Why do you say she cannot be black? Now she's black and stuff like that. So that's really weird to say if it's true what you're saying right now.
President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's
Out of words,
a tragedy that we have someone who
There's so many
wants
topics
to
that are
be
important, but
president
this is
who
totally
has
unimportant.
consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was a land,
I think his heritage originally is from Central Europe, maybe even Germany. He had relatives going or coming from England. So he's himself a third generation immigrant from Europe, and his wife especially is an immigrant too. Should never forget it. But they aren't, if in his words, black. So that's a difference. But it really doesn't matter to me. I mean, what are we talking about here? All of America benefits from this immigration policies, the exchange of knowledge, the universities, the contracts, the agreements with other countries, where people from that country come to America for some time, and the other way around. So they really benefit from those trades and those agreements.
He owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
That's true.
And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
He is again talking. I mean, I don't want to comment on that much, but as I said earlier, he's sometimes mixing up skin color and race. He's mixing up religion and heritage. I mean, there's overlaps of some kind, but it's not the same, and it's really sad to hear that all the time. Also that he points out that Obama wasn't American, and it was a lie. Now he's talking in a similar way about Miss Harris or Mrs. Harris. So it is so populistic and unnecessary. He wants to show that he's strong. He wants to show that others are not, how can I say, trustworthy, that others are not really American or as American as he is. And those are not the problems that should be on our minds right now. It's about inflation, how to get it done, how to get companies back to America, or support them in making products that can replace cheap products from outside or have a better quality and stuff like that, and science and everything else. Infrastructure, health based caps, so that the copays go a little bit down, and that the system is more controlled. Anyhow, that goes too much into detail, but there's so much they could talk about, or that should be done. But I understand that his base really likes this kind of behavior, that they want a strong leader. And if there's somebody maybe of not American heritage who is black, maybe that's his point. And then also a woman seems to be weak, which is untrue. So from my point of view, nobody's weak because of their gender, their heritage, their race, their religion. It is solely depending on their deeds, their knowledge, and their way to access and solve problems. And that's the most important thing that they should focus on. But of course, this is a debate where people pull each other's legs, and there's other things going on than only political facts.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But
We saw earlier that he was lying about inflation. Inflation was lower some time before his reign, and it always drifts up and down. There's a natural, let's say, roller coasting. Then, of course, there is COVID. And even in his reign, there were effects already visible. Inflation rose later, but there's a lot of effects that already took place during his reign. So it wasn't perfect, and it cannot be the best economy on the best, whatever it was, of all times because of that solely alone. And then there's other problems that have occurred. And I mean, even if you give him the points that there were to some extent good things that he did for the economy or that he decided on, there's a lot of other things that happened too.
they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil
So what is a good economy? How did they destroy it? Spill out the facts. You always say they're the worst. How are they the worst? What did they do? They are not doing their job correctly. So how should they do it? What would you do? How would you do it? You cannot just say, I'm doing the best job. They don't do any good job. So that's not enough.
policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan.
It's an
Let's
important
talk about our
point.
plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on.
He
President
shouldn't
Trump,
be allowed to talk
Let's
now.
turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a
They should have left the mic off, in my opinion. But anyhow, it's there's no facts coming out right now. He's just again, yeah, exactly. He's he's again. How was the word? He's just making himself look strong again because he was looking weak for a moment by her speech, and I don't really like that he's now trying to claim, oh no, I'm the strongest.
plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking
Rectify,
in
want to rectify
Pennsylvania
this position.
or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump,
president has
no,
said
What does
something
this have to do with the
twice that I
question?
need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
going
just
to
need to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president.
So what was better about it? I think it was more expensive for the individual. There was less coverage. People who are now forced to get this Obamacare, which is basically it's about $600-700. I don't know the price of 24 a year for people without income or with low income. So they have to get this healthcare at least. So there's some coverage, some rules, but of course it's not perfect. And of course there's a lot of co-pays for the people in general. But what is better about your policy? I think, I don't remember the details, but there was a lot of negative effects on people with low or not so high income.
Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration.
Very nice.
We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so
Who's interested about your people? What are the facts? Come on.
do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But
Okay.
until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan.
I don't want to be disrespectful. I already jumped into this word earlier, but concepts of a plan. Oh my God. I mean, she's not saying where the money comes from, but she's saying she wants to raise this amount of money for the first kid in another context, and she wants to do this and that with $50,000 and $25,000 per something, or small companies, small businesses. So he doesn't even say any of those more detailed plans, and he has now concepts of a plan. 9 years ago, he started attacking Obamacare. I think it was in 19 or in 18 where they tried to flip Obamacare into his new concept that he was trying to vote for. But it's really, really, really incredible, in my opinion, how less he is prepared, or at least, even if I think he was prepared, but he doesn't really want to talk about the real numbers. He makes up numbers in other questions, trillions, billions, millions, whatever, but he's never saying an exact number that is really due to a reference, in my opinion. And here again, concepts of a plan is ridiculous if you already sit on it for more than 9 years, and if you have really so many good people. And you should have said, this is bad about Obamacare. This is how we do it in my new policy. We will also do this and this. We will raise this, but we will also negotiate with the companies who are responsible for the high prices for medication, and we want to get a cap. We want to negotiate how those price management is happening, because in some cases the prices are made more or less by the company. So it's much higher than it's supposed to be, or we have to make something about it. And yeah, we have to come up with some rules that are new and that make it much easier for the general public to get decent health care, especially for some diseases like diabetes and so on.
I'm not president right now, but if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged
Oh, that's true.
as being,
I remember that.
you don't like him, you
he
said
was
at
dying.
the time because he
Oh,
got
man.
caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions.
That's exactly
I don't have to tell
what
the
it
people
does.
watching tonight, you remember what that was like?
Also, she's talking about a private insurance kind of approach that might come in the future, but you can already pay for some of the services or boost your ability to get earlier treatment if you have the money in some cases. But the system in general is quick. It is not so, how can I say, you cannot always know what your copay is exactly because of the network of the doctor or a scan that should be included, but then your insurance tries to get the money from you, but maybe it's included. Sometimes they're basically costs where it's not clear 100% from the get-go if you get the scan done or not, if it's free for you, or if you get a copay of $100, or if it's the $600 that the whole measurement takes. So it is a little bit tricky, but at least you get the treatment that you deserve. And usually there are also financial aids coming along with it. And every country that I've been to has a different system. And I think all three big countries I've been to have a very good system in place, which is not perfect. Every country has their benefits and their shortcomings in terms of health care, for example. You can have the most affordable system if you only get an appointment after 6 months of waiting, or with very crazy maneuvers through telephone lines, and then you can get it after 4 months. It's not really good. Even though you're not dying, there might be a nerve damage or whatever that needs quick treatment, or that is easy to operate on, but there are restrictions in one country of rules you have to follow up with certain detailed or repeated measurements, even if another country or another doctor has already done that, but it's not part of that system. So this is one disadvantage. In other ones, you don't have that much insurance and you have to pay a lot of it cash. Insurance is there, but it's probably not as common. That's another country, but it's much cheaper compared to Europe and the US. And in the US, you get one of the best services I've ever seen on the planet, and you get your appointments fairly quickly. One of the disadvantages is that you don't know exactly the price of the treatment in some cases, as I said, due to network uh, connections with some of the doctors. You don't know who's operating on you. You don't know some of the details, and then it might be more expensive or less expensive depending. And uh, another problem is that the prices are much higher in America compared to other systems I've been to, because you see the bills even if you're not privately insured, and it is ridiculous how much some of the uh, medicines cost. And yeah, it's getting too long now, but there's the short message is every country has their benefits and their shortcomings in terms of health care, for example, and it's always good to work on making the system better. But in most countries, the social systems get less support by the government, or it becomes more expensive because of rising prices in general, and it makes it less affordable for everybody. That's what happened over the last, let's say, 10 years or so.
Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes?
Exactly.
And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Fastest
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made
of...
a mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years, but it wasn't only.
But John McCain, in the end, voted for Obamacare, or let's say he voted against your new policy. And it was one of the most historic moments I've ever watched in voting history, to be honest, because this McCain thing was really big. I don't remember the details, but it was sad. It was highly sophisticated, and in the end, he did the right thing, in my opinion. And it's a tragic loss for this world.
Him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump...
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6.
That's not what she's saying. So you can always pay privately. If you have the money, you can get certain advantages. But the minimum, you shouldn't get neglected as if you have a chronic disease and you don't have the money or that much money, or if it costs too much for the insurance. So there shouldn't be any scenario that you don't get the treatment that you need. And that's what she was talking about. She wasn't talking about the higher ups or the people who earn enough money. She was talking about the general public who probably doesn't have as much money. I've seen families who have 3 jobs, or people have 3 jobs, and they still cannot feed all the children and let them get to school, and then they cannot attend a university. It's so expensive, the system in the US, in terms of school and everything. So with that being said, it is really crazy how he doesn't provide facts, and how much they talk about something in general. I mean, I don't get how you cannot let the name game be the name game. If it's Obamacare or something else, you can always improve it. He could have also kept the name Obamacare and just improved it with his new rules. But I think because it's called Obamacare, he didn't like it. Maybe. So that's what I was thinking. So he wanted Trump to be Trumpcare.
months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been Vice President. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do.
That's one thing I want to add. That's actually true. I've never seen a country, and that includes India, where so much has been imported from other places. Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, from all over the world. Is it being groceries or nuts or parts? It's so crazy. The brand made in America has to come back, and there has to be more domestic production for two reasons. It's not about the price. Obviously, the price somewhere else is cheaper. But if you talk about environmental effects, if you get something from very far away, there's a lot of CO2 production for the transport and everything on top of the production of this device, machine, grocery, whatever. And there's also other factors, like it kind of has an effect on the economy. If you have local products, for example, groceries that you would include only, but also there's a lot of transportation in the US, which is okay. But if you get something from California all the way east to Massachusetts, it's not that economically friendly. It's not that good in terms of climate change or using CO2. It's better to get a local product. Of course, California has the higher temperature, so some of the fruits grow there that doesn't grow in Massachusetts. But in general, you have to think about it. Where you can avoid it, you should think about avoiding transportation and other means of creating costs and CO2 on an unnecessary level that can increase the economy and that can increase productivity and help the environment at the same time.
Do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
It didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crook.
His minute is almost over, and he didn't say anything related to climate change.
Administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
To hearing their statements.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
Good speech.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't.
No, that's a wrong fact because coal is basically paid by the government, kind of, and they're getting out of coal, fossil fuels in general, and also they get rid of power plants based on radiation. So it's still tricky to navigate because they buy energy from somewhere else, and that might be including power plants who produce based on radioactive components. But the thing is, it's a process that has been started about 10, 15 years ago. And it's a process that takes time. So even if America would change their energy policy entirely, you have to give the industry, you have to give other people time. And there's a transfer, and you cannot just get rid of one source completely and then start the other one. You have to have them get developed in parallel so that there is never a shortage of energy, and also to navigate the costs because they shouldn't explode. But anyhow, we let him finish and be respectful for the rest of his comments.
sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader.
I don't think so. It is, sorry that I already interrupted again, but I think nobody laughs about the US. I think over the last 3.5 years, they respect the US more than the 4 years before that, especially Europe. And every country right now has to deal with inflation, has to deal with global problems in terms of economy, partially based still on the after effects of COVID. And certain materials to build a house, certain components to make a computer, to have basically a graphic card. They're called like minerals that are in the earth, that are only they're not easy accessible, and they're all from countries imported, and there are minimal amounts of them that you need, but it's also very tricky to get them. And there's so many problems in that direction that are not only the American problems. And I think what happened about 8 years ago when he was in power and he stopped some of the negotiations, some of the agreements with Europe in terms of the climate change and so on, it was at first point of view maybe a good thing to get rid of costs or to get some positive vibes from your own people, but its midterm and long-term damages the forthcoming. It increases the problems of alternative energy development, of other sectors that are important. Maybe not now, but it should be on the way already. And it is. I know the science in America is strong and they're already working on it. And even cars and manufacturing is strong. And they have a good way of probably putting in the infrastructure faster than Europe, in my opinion. But let's see what happens. But there's so many strong points about America. Nobody's laughing at them. They're probably laughing at certain people. That's what I want to say.
We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
It's really crazy. I have to get to terms with everything. So very nice that you have been staying. Very nice that you have listened to me saying so much about the individual points of each of the candidates that were made, or giving some background information. I hope you didn't get offended. I hope you can agree on some of the points, and even if you don't, I hope you check out some of the references that I provided, and whatever happens, I hope it's for the best of the country. I will probably post, I cannot say about the time, but there will be a comment on the whole debate, how I see it, and I already know that the American people, as I said, are very close in terms of their opinions, so I don't think there will be the winner, especially not after some time. This debate is over now. Maybe one of the candidates did better, one didn't, but after a few weeks, the effect of this debate will be gone. So I look forward if there will be another debate before the election. I hope so. And there might be, I'm looking also forward to the two candidates debating who are the candidates for the vice president. So that will be very interesting. I hope you all stay well. Please leave a like if you want. And I hope I see you soon, and maybe also some non-political topics. But this is a very important election, in my opinion, and this is based on my background, being in the US for so many years. I want to give you my point of view. I'm sorry if I didn't always find the words, because I'm out of the US for a couple of months already, and I'm losing some of the vocabulary, so it's just crazy how much you can forget in such a short amount of time. But I hope you're all well, and I hope to see you soon. Your Cozy Fly. Bye bye.